back to the big picture. So different times demand different questions. In the 20th century, we talked about waste management, and the question that we answered and asked seemed to be quite reasonable. How do we get rid of our waste efficiently with minimum damage to our health and the environment? But in the 21st century, we should be talking about resource management, and the question becomes, how do we handle our discarded resources in ways that do not deprive future generations of some, if not all, their value? So I would put to you that in the 20th century, a key issue was safety, but in the 21st century, the key issue is sustainability. We would need 4 planets if everybody consumed like an American. We would need 2 planets if everybody consumed like a European. And meanwhile, we have India and China copying our consumption patterns, another 2 billion people doing what we're doing. So clearly something has to change. And I argue that the best place to start that change is with waste, because every single human being makes waste. Every single human being, as long as they're making waste, is part of a non-sustainable way of living on a finite planet. But with good leadership, they could all be part of the solution. So we're living on this planet as if we had another one to go to. Some people see the planet something like that. You simply can't run a throwaway society on a finite planet. Think about it. Waste is the evidence that we're doing something wrong. And landfills simply bury the evidence. And incinerators burn the evidence. And we have to face the real problem. And the real problem is to fight over consumption. As Mahatma Gandhi said, the world has enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. Not only is overconsumption giving us a local waste crisis, as in Guernsey, but also a global crisis. And global warming, I should stress, is a symptom. The cause is overconsumption. You could argue it's overpopulation as well, but the argument is moot, since they have to be multiplied together. We have overpopulation multiplied by overconsumption. The global crisis began with the Industrial Revolution, when we imposed a linear society on a planet that functions in circles. So in the linear society, you start with the extraction of raw materials, ship them halfway around the world, manufacture products from them, sell them, consumption, and then you produce waste. It's a one-way process, and sometimes people measure how developed they are by how quickly you can do that. This process is stimulated with advertising, and particularly on television, and over-advertising produces over-consumption. By the time high school students left school in the United States, they would have watched over 350,000 TV commercials. They're literally programmed for an over-consuming lifestyle. Every 7 minutes on American television, you're told you're hungry, you're thirsty, you're sick, you're too fat, you're sexually frustrated, and you need a new car every 7 minutes. Now, the myth, which we're exporting around the world, the American myth, is the more you consume, the happier you become. And the reality is the more you consume, the fatter you become, and the more waste that you produce. And I think this cartoon sums it up awfully well, with modern man there, who has just experienced the other American dream, the McDonaldization of society. Throw away food, throw away packaging, throw away planet. Now I look at the impacts of this linear society. First, in the extraction of raw materials, we use a lot of energy. And in the process, we create a lot of solid waste, air pollution, water pollution, and carbon dioxide, which of course contributes to global warming. Then we use more energy on transport and more energy on the production, manufacture, more solid waste, more air pollution, more water pollution, more carbon dioxide. And actually, we produce 70 times more solid waste with extraction and manufacture than we see at the end in our trash cans. All of this energy is contributing to global warming. Now, let's look at the different ways of handling waste, what it does to this picture. Let's start with landfills. No change. If you bury something in a hole in the ground, you've got to go all the way back and start mining the raw materials all over again. No mitigation. In fact, landfills are worse because they produce methane, which molecule for molecule absorbs 25 times more energy than carbon dioxide. Incineration, landfills are not sustainable. That's simple. They're not sustainable. Incineration, the same thing. If you burn something, you go all the way back to the beginning, start all over again. You don't mitigate any of these problems. The only way you can make incineration look remotely respectable in terms of global warming is to compare yourself with landfills, and then you're comparing CO2 with methane. But it doesn't compare very well with recycling. Incinerators then are not sustainable. And other thermal destruction facilities are also not sustainable. On the other hand, recycling cuts out all the impacts of the extraction of raw materials and transport of those raw materials. And reuse of objects cuts out both extraction and manufacture. And composting, to a similar degree, if you're substituting for fertilizers, reduces both extraction and manufacture impacts. But composting does something else. If you look at that's compost, you'll see bits of wood in it, and bits of wood that you can't see. But all that wood is captured carbon, it's cellulose. And in the soil, that carbon is going to be held onto for quite a time. Whereas in an incinerator, that's instantly converted to carbon dioxide. Now, there was a European group, and there are many of these calculations. I think this perhaps is the most extreme calculation. But this European consulting company looked at a combination of recycling and composting and found that it was 46 times better at reducing greenhouse gases compared to incineration generating electricity. The equation is better if you have combined heat and power, so that you not just tap into the heat to make electricity, but also the heat to warm housing and so on. But this island, you're considering an incinerator producing electricity only. So in terms of fighting global warming, this is a great step backwards. I'm just going to list the other arguments against incineration now, and at the end of my talk, I'll go back to them and give some more chapter and verse. Incineration is a waste of energy. It's ironic that they call them waste-to-energy facilities, actually waste energy. It's a poor economic investment. You know that. There's a huge amount of money that we're talking about being put into this facility. Very few jobs are created for that very large capital investment. It wastes valuable time, 25 years. It is very inflexible and stifles innovation. It generates a toxic ash. For every 4 tons of trash that you burn, you get 1 ton of ash. It doesn't get rid of landfills because you need landfills for the ash. It produces toxic air emissions. It's extremely unpopular with the public. I think the number of people here probably gives some indication. And there is a far better alternative and sustainable alternative, which is what I should be spending most of my time on. Even if we made incineration safe, we would never make it sensible. It simply does not make sense to spend so much money destroying resources that we should be sharing with the future. And the modern incinerator is attempting to perfect a bad idea. Oh, they're getting better. I mean, the incinerators today are better than the ones we fought 25 years ago. But unfortunately, they're perfecting a bad idea. Our task at the industrial level, our task in the 21st century is not to get better and better at destroying discarded materials. Our task is to stop making packaging and products that have to be destroyed. And from a personal level, our task is to search for a lifestyle beyond consumption or beyond consumerism, beyond overconsumption. The waste problem will not be solved with better technology. And so you were on a hiding to nothing the first time you brought in a consulting firm of engineers because they were going to come up with an engineering solution. They also probably knew what engineering solution was required and produced it. And I believe that this waste is not a technological problem. It's a problem of organization, education, and industrial design. This is where we should be putting our effort.